Well, it's time to talk more characters. Hi, I'm Andrew, and I'm on a fantastical journey through books. And today in this video, we're returning to a top 5 list, and we're going to be looking at my top 5 fantasy supporting characters. Last week, I looked at my top 5 fantasy main characters, and now we're going to see exactly who I like in the fantasy supporting role. So, let's dive right in first to some honorable mentions. Now, before I talk about my honorable mentions, I do want to remind you, like the last video, that this video may contain some light spoilers because it may contain characters that show up as supporting characters later in the series. So just be warned that there might be characters that show up in later books in a series. So like I said, light spoilers for this video. Just like the last video, I'm going to set some rules for myself. So the big one is that I cannot repeat characters from the same series more than once. So I'm not going to rack up multiple characters from Dresden Files or the Stormlight Archive or really the Cosmere, because like the last video, I'm going to keep the Cosmere as one big series. So we're only going to have one Cosmere character on this list. Now, no particular order for these honorable mentions, but I have one character coming from the Dresden Files, and that is Butters. This is a character that comes up later on in the series. A big kind of thing about the Dresden Files is that every book he's kind of collecting more and more allies that are on Harry's side. And later on in the series, he's going to meet a medical examiner named Butters, and this character's great. He's kind of a dopey, sidekicky type character is kind of how I would kind of describe him as. Typical guy who works as a medical examiner that Harry has to go to for help. But he's such an endearing guy. He has no powers whatsoever. He's not as kind of like badass as Murphy is because she's a cop and can do martial arts. He is just a medical examiner who gets thrown into this world and is just on for the ride with Harry. And no matter what, like he's there to help support Harry, like the ultimate support character, even though he has no business being part of the supernatural world whatsoever. I think he's an endearing character for me. Another character that didn't make my list of supporting characters because of my rule, and that's Michael Carpenter, also from the Dresden Files. This, once again, goes back to my love of like paladin-type characters because that's what Michael Carpenter is. He also comes in a later book as part of Harry's entourage of allies. And this guy is just a beacon of goodness. And he is like great at fighting and can join in with Harry and go toe-to-toe with the supernatural creatures that he has to deal with because he is a guy with a magical sword. And he is on this quest to protect people. And I just love that character that is there to protect people. And that's Michael Carpenter. And his faith is his strength and his everything, and is what gives him his power. And I thought he was such an interesting character. My next two characters are, once again, because of the rule where I can only have one per series, going to the Cosmere. One of my favorite supporting characters is Hoid, or Wit, depending on what series you're reading. He is our world hopper character, and he is just hilarious. I love his jokes. Like the amount of humor that Sanderson gives this character is top notch. I just resonate so well with that. And the idea of him being a storyteller and has a story for everything is great. Also, another character from a series I can't use twice. This is, once again, a little bit cheating because last time I used Dungeon Crawler Carl and I'm using it again. And this is also much later into the book series. He comes in, I believe, in book 5 of the series, and that is Quasar. And Quasar ends up being this like foul-mouthed, rude lawyer for Carl. And every scene he comes in, I'm just like, yes, this is going to be so much fun. I love this character, and it's just great. And then lastly, for my honorable mentions, before I get into my top 5 supporting characters, is Grubb from the Darkwater Legacy series, or the first book being The Ember Blade. Once again, really fun character. He is this rude guy that the main characters meet, and he's just hilarious. Like the scenes he's like this disgraced guy that doesn't really want to be involved and be a hero with everybody, but he kind of goes along with the crew because he needs to, and he's just so much fun. And when he's on the page, it's going to be laughs. And that seems to be kind of a trend with my honorable mentions, is they're just really fun characters that can give that levity in the moment where you're just like, okay, cool, comic relief time. Main characters are cool. These supporting characters are kind of fun. So on to my list for my top 5 all-time supporting fantasy characters. In my spot number 5 is a character who I've actually only read one book of, and it's a series. It's an incomplete series. I have not returned to the series yet, but the fact that they make this list with only one book says a lot. It's also why they're in spot 5. And that character is Jean Tannen from The Lies of Locke Lamora, or the General and Bastard series. Now, I've only read Lies of Locke Lamora, but from that one book, this is a great character. If you remember from my last video, my number 1 was, and if you haven't watched that video, pause, go watch it, and then come back, Samwise Gamgee. And I feel like Jean Tannen is a lot of that character. He is the best friend who will do whatever you can, have your back no matter what, and he is just there to help out Locke. And this brother from another mother relationship that these two guys have is fantastic. And Jean Tannen is that friend that I want. Just like I had with Sam in the last video, where I called him a main character, that's definitely Jean Tannen, at least for Lies of Locke Lamora, is definitely a supporting character. But that friendship that they have, like, this guy is so cool. And I love how his love for his friend is there for anything. So that's number 5. On to my number 4. And my number 4 supporting character returns to Dungeon Crawler Carl, and that's everyone's assistant / manager, Mordecai. Yeah, I love Mordecai. He is in every book so far. He starts off as kind of like this assistant to the game for Carl, and his character develops through it. And every book adds a little bit more to his backstory, where you're like, this isn't just a guy who's there to tell Carl the rules and help Donut out as his manager. There's more than that. And I'm really intrigued to see where the book series goes and this character's background that keeps kind of like dripping it to you. Because there's definitely something there that's kind of haunting him from his past. And I'm wondering if that's ever going to come back to kind of like bite Carl and Donut in the butt a little bit. I don't think so. I'm hoping not. But Mordecai is a great character. I just love how every book is a little bit more of him. It's a little bit different. And if you've read the series, you know what I mean by a little different for that character. But he's another character that when he's on the page, I'm ready for some interactions that I really like. So that's number 4. Now on to my number 3 spot. And my number 3 spot goes to the Cosmere. And it's kind of fitting that this character is in spot 3. And that is Steris Harms from Mistborn Era 2. She comes into the series as someone who is courting with Wax. They actually arrange a marriage early on in the first book. It doesn't happen in the first book, but they're kind of like setting the stage that's saying, hey, let's bring our houses together because we'll be stronger with resources and whatnot. But I love how analytical she is. She has everything planned out. She knows that Wax is this lawman, and he's rough and tumble from when his days in the roughs, but he's now back in kind of like urban society. And she's like, hey, it would make sense for the two of us to be together. And this is where we kind of get into spoiler territory as the series continues. So if you want to skip ahead to my next number 2, you can. I'll put a timestamp up again to say, hey, you probably want to stop if you haven't read past the first book, because I really gave almost no spoilers at all. It's very early in the book of what I said for Alloy of Law. But as the book progresses and the relationship between Wax and Steris develop, and they actually start falling for one another and then start a family together, it's just such a great dynamic for the two of them. And it totally makes sense if you go back to that video. I believe Wax ended up being my number 3 main character, and now Steris is my number 3 support character, because as the series goes, they really do support each other as this lovely couple, where she knows he's got to do his thing, and he is there to, be with her. And it's tough. At the beginning of their relationship, it's very much an arranged kind of thing. And as we get into the later books, especially once we hit Lost Metal and they're married and have a kid, you can tell that he's fallen for her and truly does love her. And he's kind of gotten past his shadows for himself. So that's my number 3. Now let's go to my number 2 all-time supporting fantasy character. And my number 2 is actually a book that did not show up into my honorable mentions. And my number 2 supporting character is Nicomo Koska from the First Law trilogy. This is another one of those characters where it's like, he's my favorite side character, supporting character, because of kind of the comic relief, the humor that this character brings in. Nicomo Koska is hilarious. He is this guy we meet. He's very much like a supporting side character to another main character in the book. And he just has this charm about him. And he knows he's kind of a scummy guy. And he kind of leans into that. And he is witty and he is despicable, but he knows he's despicable and doesn't care that he's despicable. And he knows he's out for himself. But there are moments where Nicomo Koska is like, maybe I should do what I really, the good thing to do and not the selfish thing to do. But usually, knowing Nicomo, it's going to bring him right back to what he used to be. And that's kind of the thing with the First Law trilogy, is there's a lot of the characters wind up right back where they started. There's, you think they're going to grow and they're going to make the right choice, and nope, they're right back. And it's kind of a grim, dark trope anyway, but Nicomo Koska does it so well because he's just so funny and he's just so brash, and he is like a giant peacock at times, and he's just like, look at me, I'm Nicomo Koska, and he's just a great supporting character to add into this story. So that brings me to my number 1 all-time favorite supporting fantasy character. And that character is Karen Murphy from the Dresden Files. Yep, back to the Dresden Files. In fact, we've got 3 different Dresden Files characters on this list. You gotta know it. It's up there on the bookshelf. There's 14 books that I've read, hoping to get to 17 by the end of next year, maybe 18, I think, if the new book comes out. But Karen Murphy is great. She is this badass cop who has no powers, who takes on the supernatural like it is nothing. She's not afraid to do what needs done, not in the sense of crime. She's a good cop, but I mean, she will go and get into a fight that possibly she could die in and come out on top. Karen Murphy is great, and she complements Dresden so well, I feel, especially early on in the series when Dresden has that male gaze that I talked about in the last video. The one thing that people kind of criticize the Dresden Files for is that kind of its sexist male gaze. Murphy puts him in his place, constantly, and kind of keeps him grounded in reality. And I just love how she's no nonsense. She gets it done. She knows she's a good person. And that's very apparent as you go through later on in the series, that she is a good person, to the core. And if side by side, you got Harry and Murphy versus the world. These two are unstoppable. And I just find her so great. She's in every book. She really is Harry's best friend. And she tries to get things done. Even when resources are low, when she has no power other than like her just physical like training and a handgun, she gets things done. So by far, she is my favorite fantasy supporting character, bar none. So that's my list of all-time fantasy supporting characters. Let me in the comments down below what you think of my list. Put your own list down there as well. We can start a conversation about that. Maybe you can give me a new book series, just like the last one. I got some great comments, by the way, from people. I have some books now on my list that weren't there before. So thank you for all those that commented, giving me some ideas of what to read. It's fantastic. I'm hoping to get a lot more on my list after this video. So what do you think? Comment down below. Like the video. Subscribe for more content like this. And I will see you next time as I continue my fantastical journey.